Well, good morning and welcome to Public Policy Forum and LITFest. Today, we discuss a very important part of India's digital journey, gaming, the new frontier. India's gaming sector is booming and is projected to reach 290 billion rupees by 2025, the time when India's digital economy is estimated to have touched $1 trillion. We also seem to have a very strong consumer base, which runs into tens of hundreds of millions of consumers and is growing every day. Given India's demographic dividend and the largest, youngest population in the age group which gets attracted to gaming, this still remains an unexplored territory, growing fast and also becoming messier by the day. So there is not much clarity on how to deal with this in terms of regulation, in terms of taxation, in terms of classification, and so on and so forth. So today's discussion discusses and highlights this and tries to throw light on various aspects of gaming, including the ones which I've already mentioned and many more which are going to come up, as the background to the discussion is going to be set by Mr. Kocher, who is Chairman SKOCH Group, talking about lessons from the crypto mess, and he'll also be moderating the discussion. We are joined by Dr. Dipali Panjoshi, who is Distinguished Fellow, SKOCH, and former Executive Director, RBI, development economist who served the RBI for 36 years. She will be talking about should gambling be legalized. State perspective, we are going to be joined by Mr. Akash Deep, Commissioner and Secretary, Public Health Engineering Department, Government of Assam, talking about Assam perspective. So in addition to the public health engineering, he also is in charge of the Jal Jeevan Mission in Assam and has worked with other state governments, including Uttar Pradesh and Meghalaya, across various sectors. Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, Principal Secretary from Government of Telangana, is one person who has put Telangana on the IT map of India and is instrumental in Telangana emerging as a digital state. He will be talking about the Telangana view. Odisha perspective is going to be presented by Mr. Manoj Kumar Mishra, Secretary, Electronics and IT, Government of Odisha. He has successfully delivered a number of strategic projects in the state, particularly developing rail and port logistics system and development of IT networks. For J&K perspective, we have Mr. Amit Sharma, Secretary, IT and IT Department and CEO, Jammu and Kashmir E-Governance Agency. He was earlier Special Secretary Transport, Special Secretary Forests and Ecology, and Director Food and Civil Supplies, amongst several other positions that was held by him. On economy and gaming, we have Dr. Subi Chaturvedi, who is Distinguished Public Policy Professional and Chair, CAII Committee on Creator Experience, Economy and Gaming. She has been at the front and the center of some of the most pressing development debates of the time, from the digital economy, entrepreneurships and startups, to diversity and sustainability.
Thank you, Gosha, and really looking forward to the deliberations today.
You're welcome. For defining eSports, Mr. Lokesh Suji, Director, Electronic Sports Federation of India, ESFI. Very interesting name. When you read it, it reads as eSports, but actually an eSports evangelist that he happens to be, and a telecom veteran with 18 years and more of corporate experience with companies like Huawei, Tata Communications, Airtel, and Reliance. Known name when it comes to the Indian eSports. From Cuts International, we have Mr. Amol Kulkarni, who is Research Director, talking about the competitive issues. He has led initiatives to bridge the gap between evidence and policies in sectors such as technology, finance, mobility, amongst others, using tools like regulatory impact assessment. The legal perspective is going to be given by Ms. Neha Chaudhary, who is partner Ikigai Law, a public policy professional. She advises diverse stakeholders, including technology companies and think tanks, on formulating and communicating policy positions. Professor V.N. Alok from Indian Institute of Public Administration talks about Sin Industries and State Finances, being a renowned public policy, public finance and fiscal decentralization expert. He was the member of the Finance Commission and also the member of the Delhi State Finance Commission. The industry perspective is put together by Mr. Debarshi Datta, who is board member of Withzeal Technologies and member of CAII Committee on Creator Experience, Economy and Gaming, a seasoned executive with close to 2 decades of experience in fintech and agtech space, specializes in strategy, P&L management, and leading projects from concept to reality. One of our panel members, Mr. Soham Thakur, who is founder of Gamergy, is not able to join on account of the illness that he suffered since yesterday. So with this, I invite our moderator and from lessons from the crypto mess, Mr. Kochar.
Well, thank you very much, Gursharan, and namaskar to you all. I am old and I'm a reforms historian, so I, like to speak, which is my age appropriate speech. Honorable Chief Justice of India, in a speech last week, talked about how Indian youth needs the right mix of ambition and inspiration to help the country become better. His, when old people talk, they talk in messages. So you have to think, what is it that he's meaning to say? I think what he's trying to say has been quite a bit in context of what we call the startup ecosystem, which has now become the upstart ecosystem. Specifically, if you look at industries like crypto, gaming, etc., the more virtual the business gets, not so much in, let's say, e-commerce and so on, but the more virtual the business gets, you will find that the proportion of ambition is almost 100% in virtual businesses and inspiration becomes zero. Now, in a country like India, the socio-economic dynamics are always important. They're incredibly important. And greed alone cannot make you succeed over a long-term period. So I think this is a very important message to remember. The way crypto industry has been going about it is a classic case study on how not to do business in India. They have retired bureaucrats, recently retired bureaucrats, advising them and writing papers for them on how to beat the system, how to beat the government. They're charging lakhs. Now, we have no problem with retired businesses, retired bureaucrats having a line of business. But I think it is incredibly important for such retired bureaucrats to also give a line of disclosure that whatever they are saying has been funded by so-and-so, who in turn has got the funding from so-and-so, who in turn has got a funding in so-and-so, till you actually can track and trace every rupee that is flowing in the ecosystem. Who better than bureaucrats to understand what kind of jalebi industry can weave if they really want to, and are they going to be a willing participant in that? So as I said, that as long as you're in a chair, you are protecting India's interest, protecting interest of people of India. Don't start working against it the minute you retire. And at the least be honest, disclose. The second culprit is the lawyers. Law or legal battles in India have been quite far behind, its more developed counterparts in USA and Europe, etc. Law is one of the biggest money generating businesses. Now, here you have a situation where the investors are American. And so the team that deals with India is also a legal team. And they kind of resonate with the Indian lawyers very well. And Indian lawyers are advising these foreign companies or foreign investors on what is the best way to tie up Indian democracy and policy making into courts. So the gentle art of persuasion has led way to a very harsh step of litigation. No one believes in persuading, they believe in litigating. So even before a policy is written or whatever, you find that everything lands up in court. So that is the other thing which has a lesson for the gaming industry, that not everything that goes into a court comes out smelling of roses. The third stakeholders in this game, in the crypto game, have been lobbyists. So there is a new generation of lobbies. The number of Section 8 companies that have opened up in India for the past 2 years are possibly more than since independence. And the profile has changed. A Section 8 company is a not-for-profit, and it's the way of government to recognize a charity. That loophole is being used to do all kinds of stuff which is other than poverty alleviation and charity. The lobbyists take crores of rupees from the industry. In crypto industry, the estimate is around 100 crores have flown through these channels with no disclosures, zero disclosures. And they basically argue to the American sensibilities that India is a developed country. It's a completely corrupt system. So the democracy is for sale. You can, if you throw enough money at the system and through the system, you can buy any decision in your favor. So this is the role that lobbyists are playing. I don't know whether the system works like that or not, but I see a lot of lobbyists who are startups buying very big fancy houses. Whether the policy happened or not happened is another story. Fortunately, we are not a banana republic. There are very strong voices of reason, and there are very able hands holding Indian democracy back from the precipice that all these gentlemen, the lobbyists, the lawyers, the retired bureaucrats are trying to drag with foreign money India into. The first lesson, therefore, from the crypto industry for the gaming industry is not to be fooled by these false prophets whose God is money and not democracy. There is no shortcut to an enlightened and informed debate in a democracy. And you would find that history will tell you this. Another enlightened bureaucrat is a gentleman called Mr. Siraj Hussain, an agriculture economist who was Secretary Agriculture, Government of India. And just yesterday, he wrote in his column, I think it was in Indian Express, saying that one single lesson from the farmers' agitation and the return of the farm laws is that center should not legislate on state subjects. If something has to be deliberated at a state, constitutionally it is a state function, it is best to leave it to the state governments. Overheads of democracy and federalism both are crucial for survival of what we call the idea of India. The lesson for gaming industry then is to cease and desist from going the path of trying to get a center legislation on the subject. The lobbying has started, the lawyers have started, retired bureaucrats have started. But the fact is that gaming is a state subject. And sooner or later, it is going to meet the same fate as the farm law agitation or any other legislation where it is a state subject, but through a lot of web weaving, so to say, or honey trapping, there is an attempt to get a central legislation on the subject. So not happening. Why it is not happening? Because states have a very compelling reason. Ever since India has gone in for a GST regime, and COVID has taken a very heavy toll, you will find state finances of practically every state are very precariously perched. So if you look at state revenues, you will find the highest revenues actually come from sin industries like liquor, followed by oil, followed by registration. Now, in all earnestness, is there any area left for the state to generate adequate and significant revenue? Probably the answer lies in some of the sin industries. Now, that would raise a moral dilemma as to should the government be promoting sin? The question is, who defines what is sin? And so, one of our speakers will be talking about it. You'll find that what you construct or construe as sin today, all of them date during the British Raj. They are not either the Indian Sanskriti or the Indian culture or what India was before it was conquered by the East India Company. There could be laws on homosexuality, there could be laws on drinking, there could be laws on cannabis, there could be laws on gambling. All of these are significant lines of legitimate economic activity across the world, including the UK today. So is India going to live in an India that is pre-1800s, or it is going to move into the modern economic order, more so given the compulsions on finances that the states face on finances? And I think gaming offers an attractive avenue to bridge this gap. The next point that I want to make is that economic development in India has not been equitable. There have been states for geographical challenge, hill states, northeastern states. These are the people who face insurgencies the more, they faced law and order issues the most. And one of the reasons is that they do not have adequate jobs. Now, these states can look at gaming industry as job generative. Now, you say IT industry has turned a lot of states into advanced states like Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, so on and so forth. And they're always competing for investments from software companies, software development revenues, software business revenues. Now, in all fairness, how do the geographically challenged states compete with these advanced states? One possible answer is that these geographically challenged states are very good in creative arts. They're very good in design. They're very good in graphics. They could possibly be good in artificial intelligence. These are all greenfield areas where no one has a first mover advantage. These are all new areas. So probably if such ecosystems and software development systems and economy boosters can come in states that are more geographically challenged or financially excluded or digitally excluded, it would be for the better of Atmanirbhar growth of India, which is what the Honorable Prime Minister has been talking about. My last point is that practically all investors in this industry are American. There's hardly any Indian investment. So they only look at from an American perspective, how do they make a killing on stock market, entering and exiting. They care a damn about socio-economic development of India. Most founders are techies. These are youngsters who are gamers. They used to play games. So they said, why not develop one? So they started developing one and it became a running success. But the fact is that they cannot look beyond their nose. If they look beyond their nose, all they see is a computer screen. They have no sense of policy making, socio-economic imperatives of India. And you can't hold them guilty for that, because that is who they are. So who then shoulders this responsibility? This responsibility then comes on the shoulders of the public policy folks that are working in this industry. Unfortunately, you find that most of them are part of American education system again. They're young graduates with 0 to 2 years of experience who think they've already got it figured how to shortcut democratic processes and India. Now, it is this target audience that I'm talking to, that please don't do that. Listen to what the Chief Justice said. Ambition and inspiration have to be in equal quantity in whatever you're doing, because eventually you will fail. Your career is not 2 years or 4 years. Your career is 40 years ahead of you. And you will be carrying the stigma of what you're doing today for the rest of your life. So the final lesson then for these folks is that there is no shame in seeking help. No shame in seeking help from institutions or individuals who understand the art and the science of policy making in India. Don't drown out the voices that are inconvenient. Don't bulldoze the systems. India as a country will always have this overhead of democracy and federalism, any amount of American money you throw at it is not going to change that, at the least not in my lifetime. With that, I end my opening remarks. And before I invite the speakers, first I would like to invite Debrushi, Deb, who is from the industry. I have made some very serious remarks, and in all fairness, we should give industry a hearing as well and understand what are their points of pain. Is it exactly what I'm saying it is, or they have their own tale of woes that no one is understanding enough. Deb?
Before Deb comes in, Deb, I'll take just 30 seconds from you. I announced Dr. Subhi Chaturvedi's talk as economy and gaming. My apologies for that. It is policy, economy, and gaming. So let's keep that in mind. Thank you very much. And Deb, kindly go ahead.
Thanks, Samir. Thanks, Gusharan. Samir, while I was hearing your speech, let me just clarify. I don't come from that 2 years or 4 years of gaming experience. I'm having around 2 decades of experience and then guiding the industry of the gaming things. In that perspective, which I see is more a matured business, which is about to come, which should not go down the way, as you mentioned, of the cryptos. So as you said it rightly, it should be the experience of public policy along with the culture that we are brought up in and the opportunities that we see. All the things has to be clubbed together, taking into consideration the economic aspect as well. So as an industry, gaming cannot progress if there is a situation of instability or confusion in the industry. From the gaming industry's perspective, what we intend to have or what we intend to look at is uniformity. As you mentioned, the central government cannot lay a law which is governed by the states. At the same point of time, what the confusion right now is, being a digital world, we should be able to understand that agri-tech or a farm law and a gaming law should be put in separate parameters or should be considered in separate contours. Yes, the state view is very important, and there should be a consensus between states and the center because it is digital. It can be accessed from any part of India. Yes, definitely when states impose a ban, the certain restrictions are there, and we find that people also know how to overcome the restrictions also digitally. That is also a challenge because that cannot be addressed by the gaming companies if somebody is overcoming digitally the challenge of location. Having said that, this needs to be looked in very seriously as uniformity is the matter of the day. So in this uniformity section, what we expect from the state governments is that there should be a legislation which is uniform in nature across the country so that there is no confusion, there is no instability in the minds of the investors as well as the business. Because gaming, if we look at it, there are few companies which has gone on to raise millions of dollars in India, which is now promoting multiple ecosystems across gaming and across the industry. There has been a lot of employment generation that is happening around this industry. There are states which are coming up with gaming technology park. So there is promotion that is happening across in multiple states. But at the same point of time, there is some of the states which are having a serious second thoughts on the consequences of gaming. Yes, I do agree and do see that it should be regulated. That should be a regulatory policies across this. But while mentioning that there should be regulation across this, uniformity is the need of the hour. uniformity, as you rightly said, like northeastern states. If I look at some of the northeastern states itself, in some states, gaming is welcome, but in some states, it is not so welcome. So there is again a confusion whether to go in that region or not to go in that region, whether we are welcomed by open arms or not welcomed by open arms. So all those things needs to be seen across in this, because once an investment is coming to a state, once a gaming technology park is coming to a state, it is not only for that state, it is also for that regional upliftment, because people from other parts of the states and nearby states also come and get the benefits of that. And if there is a state of confusion, it becomes very difficult for the industry to move ahead on those lines. With this are my introductory remarks on this, Samir, and over to you.
Thanks, Deep. What we are trying to do at Scotch Group and Scotch Foundation is to listen to everybody's concerns, discuss them threadbare, and then maybe come out with a common minimum program, which then forms the basis of a model reference law that each state can look at. Because we would say, okay, so these are 20 issues, but can we look at the 5 issues that all states agree on? Unfortunately, there is no such space left in the central government. Center State Council used to be one such instrumentality. It has not been very effective. So the job is that of independent think tanks and bodies like ours to carry forward this dialogue and say that this seems to be a common minimum agenda. With this, I would like to bring in V. and Alok. Alok, how much can states ban gaming or stay away from sin industries? What do their finances tell you?
Thank you, Samir. Do you want me to speak for 5 minutes, or you just want me to answer this question first?
You can speak for 3 minutes and answer this question.
Okay. Samir, thank you for. Let me first answer these questions. What you have raised, what Mr. Datta has also raised there, that so far as the sin industries are concerned, I know we have friends from the states where the state excise is an important subject, which is also not a part of the GST. So it is the state subject, and the state has to see what kind of tax they can levy on these industries. Yes, we do have certain states like Gujarat, like Bihar, where we have complete prohibitions. So, and we have to respect the federal character of the country, and whereby Article 1 of the Constitution, which says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Though it's not a federation of states, a union of states, but we do have 7th schedule, whereby a number of items are listed there in the state list, and taxes on the alcohol and others falls under the state subject. So we do have to respect that part of it. Given the federal fiscal architecture of India, the state government is actually rely heavily on the transfer of resources from the union, while they have to carry out the bulk of the expenditure responsibilities. As per the rough estimates, Samir, the union government, it collects 63% of the aggregate resources, whereby the states collect just about 37%. On the other side, the state undertakes 63% of the expenditure responsibilities, and rest is by the union government. So, which means there is a vertical imbalance, which necessitates the orderly transfers of the union government to the state government. So, Finance Commission does that job. I do understand that there are some taxes on tobacco, which the union government undertakes, but that is also transferred to the states through the mechanisms of finance commissions. As you know, this 1956 agreement, in which the states were not levying any kind of sales taxes on tobacco, textile, and sugar. And in lieu of that, the union government was supposed to levy the additional excise duty. So additional excise duty was levied along with the basic excise duty, and the proceeds of this was transferred to the states based on the consumptions estimates. And various finance commissions have been doing that kind of exercise. So tobacco is very, very important. Now, coming back to the state finances, the states, it generally meet about 45% of their total expenditure requirements, which means they need about 55% either through the vertical transfers or through the public debt mechanisms. And states, of course, they have to manage various subjects like public order, public health, sanitation, primary education, dispensaries, local governments. Local government undertakes various kinds of subjects, including street lights, solid waste management, sanitations, and a couple of other things. Till recently, the state government relied significantly on sales taxes and state VAT, as Samir has just said. The taxes on hydrocarbon, has contributed significantly to the state revenue, followed by, as you said, registrations tax, the stamp duty on registrations. But the state excise is also very, very important, which is not a part of the sales tax of the value-added taxes. It's also not the part of the GST, but it contributes 13.5% of the state-owned tax revenue, or one can say it's about 11.5% of the own revenue of the states. And this state excise is levied largely on this sin industries, or the consumption of these sin industries. So what is the sin? What do we really mean by the sin? Sin actually implied that, which means it's addictive, it's self-destructive, it's socially undesirable, right? So this includes taxes on liquor, taxes on the Indian-made foreign liquors, opiums, ganja, bhangs, and things like that. So what is, you might remember that, do we produce these goods here in India and consume it here, or do we produce this India here and export it? We might remember the industrialist called Chogle, right? Who just died, I think, very, very recently. And he was making a sparkling wine called champagne. The champagne did not really like it, and they filed some kind of a suit there. And now I think this industry has been sold. So we do have the capacity to produce the international type of stuff, and then we can export it here. But so far as the state finances is concerned, that's what you asked me to speak on. So in India,
I'll just pause you here. And, so what you're saying is that from a state finance perspective, whether we like it or not, the revenue from sin industries is going to be a critical part. Given, they can look at the moral dilemma and all of that. So at that juncture, let me bring in Dr. Dipali Pant Joshi, who argues that gambling should be legalized. What is sin? So, she's essentially saying that these things should be legalized. Why do you say that, Dipali ji? You are on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'd like to title my talk Feeling Young and Being Old, because I'm talking about a nascent industry. And I'm also saying that the more things change, the more they remain the same. I'm going to divide my presentation in 4 parts. First, I will discuss the historical dimension, as discussed with you, Samir Bhai, the antecedents. Then why, how, models of regulation, size of the market and adjacencies, and close with a SWOT analysis. Why do I support regulation? Well, I'm a true blue regulator. My, my declaration, or my whatever you call it, is that I cut my milk teeth on Mint Street. So it's difficult for me to forget what I was born and bred to be, which is a regulator. Now let's look at the historical dimension. Let me begin with a question. Who do you think invented the game of Pachisi? I'll tell you, it was Shivji who played it with the goddess Parvati. Again, the second question, what has religious sanctity on Diwali, the night we, his subjects, celebrate the joyous return of Raja Ramchandra to Ayodhya? Why is it auspicious to play the game of cards? We play in festivity. We play to win the favor of goddess Lakshmi, so she smiles on us throughout the year. Let me take you to the 16th century in Bengal, to Ganjifa Dash Avatar, the popular game of cards based on the 10 avatars of Vishnu. Ganjapa, a variant, was played in Orissa. Creed Patra, a game popular by the royals of Mysore. Pachisi in Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab. We all know the story of the Mahabharata, and more of that later. But on Makar Sankrant, you all know that there are kite flying contests all over Maharashtra, Gujarat, the northern belt, and also illegal cockfights in Krishna, Guntur, East and West Godavari districts. So let me just sum up this first part with one overarching question. Do Indians gamble? You bet they do, on anything and everything, whether it will rain today or not in Rajasthan. And every ball of the cricket match, betting is our major sport. So what happened? When did this change? You rightly said it changed with the sanctimonious British, who invoked the heavy hand of the law in their bid to discharge the white man's burden and civilize the natives. You see, betting used to happen very often in England through what were known as bucket shops. Bucket shops were brokerages where they held the orders rather than the brokers didn't immediately execute these orders to make a killing. So having legalized against those, the British came to India and they brought with them a doctrine of parens patria. Now I'm just borrowing a bit of Latin. What actually means is the power of the state to intervene even against a negligent parent. So the state becomes the parent. So with no knowledge of our customs and traditions, with overzealous missionary zeal, they brought in this doctrine of the benevolent state, which was going to the parent state, which will protect the state in paternalism from themselves. So now, if you look at the state as parent protector, the excessive paternalism of the state led them to apply arguments of immorality, the Quaker argument of addiction, the effects of gambling on large swathes of society. And we accepted. And not only did we accept these traits of Victorian morality, where you could not have had a woman on your panel and you could not have spoken of the legs of a piano, we continue to accept all these befuddled English ideas as gospel truth because we all have a colonial mindset. We have been schooled by padres and nuns. Liquor and pan masala are also addictive, but there's just a warning on the packet. They are freely available. Society changes. And today, cigarette smoking and consumption of liquor have become accepted standards of socially accepted elite behavior. Let me return back to the British. Did the British gamble? Again, as any fan of P.G. Wodehouse will testify, of course you do. You have Bertie Wooster at the races. He sets a book on the village competitions. He calculates the odds on the Princess of Blandings. So what did the British do? They cleverly excluded horse racing. And to date, they gamble heavily on the races and on their football pools. The British brought in a doctrine called res extra commercial. And this is almost going back to America and to John Locke. who said that that which you have not earned by the sweat of your brow, which is not commercial, is illegal, it is immoral, it is vile. And the Black's Dictionary, Law Dictionary of 1860, defined gambling as the payment of a prize to win a prize on the throw of dice or the turn of the wheel, where you had done nothing other than that. Now, the British, being clever, drew a because they were also earning revenue and they were also gambling. They drew a distinction. They said there is a game of chance and there is a game of skill. Now, a game of skill is horse racing. Their success depends on superior knowledge, training, attention, experience, strategy. And in India, they are only playing games of chance. These we banned by the Act of 1930. Now, this act itself is antediluvian, but let me now not bore you. Let me fast forward to the present. Only thing I want you to remember from all that I have said so far is that betting has always been part of our culture. So it was, so it is, and so it ever will be. Now, the strongest argument I adduce for regulation is Shakuni Mama's dice. Had there been a regulator, just consider, checking the loaded dice, so many evil things would not have come to pass. There would have been no Kurukshetra carnage. Haryana would not have been ravaged and pillaged. Gender justice would not have had to be invoked by Draupadi. The Pandavas would not have lost their kingdom. India would have remained the land of milk and honey. Defense budgets would not have bled the exchequer if only there had been a regulator to check the conformity of the dice with accepted principles. In sum, gambling and gaming has a long tradition in India. And those of our generation, Sabir Bhai, will certainly remember Devanand and the gambler and Madhubala singing, Apne pe bharosa hai to ye daav laga le, ye daav laga le. So having explained the need for regulation, let me now take you into deeper waters on the models of regulation. How of it? Now, I already confessed that I've been a regulator all my life. So, I give you three choices. A, regulate and strangulate. B, regulate and facilitate. C, regulate, but with a light, deft, enforceable touch. Clearly, C will win. Regulate to set the rules of the game. Here I talk of the Goldilocks principle. This must be applied in regulation. You all know this childhood story of Goldilocks and the three bears. Not too much, not too little, just right. So here I'm bringing you to the rule of proportionality, which is increasingly applied to assess both the appropriateness of administrative decisions and the validity of the impugned provisions of law. That is, striking the right balance to satisfy the test of reasonableness under Article 14 of the Constitution without infringing the rights of Article 19 stricto sensu, which again is the Latin word, which means look at it narrowly. So now I draw a distinction between a wager, which is between Samir Bhai and me, or let us say between A and B, and betting, which can be by many persons from A to Z. It involves the promise, of course, to give money or money's worth upon the determination of an uncertain event. Betting takes place, perhaps even if you are speaking, it's taking place. It happens. So if you don't regulate it, there is a chaotic jungle. And as any James Bond film aficionado will tell you, the house always wins. People bet anyway. So legalize it. Set rules. Enforce rules. Introduce checks and balances. And today, decode the algorithm. What happens when you play in cyberspace? It is a controlled area, and therefore it can be regulated with some degree of certainty. What are the intending players required to submit? I would say they should be required to submit a recognized government document as a proof of identity, which is verified by the platform before access is granted when you bet online. A government issued ID will serve as age verification. If you are underage, the platform will not admit you. It will ensure compliance with existing regulations, prevent identity theft, prevent phishing attacks. You use a computer. Every time you use a computer, you leave an electronic footprint. Identity verification will prevent fraud. There is an eKYC before you can bet, which will screen the players, obtain and maintain a record of their identity. It can trace their location, accept payment only through recognized credit and debit cards, and all the winnings will be taxed. Now let's look at the advantages. The advantages in this is, first let me tell you the size of the market and the adjacencies. These are absolutely mind-boggling. Revenue accretion for the state, revenue generation for the public exchequer to be used for public good. You made me do a lot of reading. And according to a 2019 report titled Federation of Sports Gaming Report on Taxation of Online Fantasy Sports, on the gaming market in India, the online fantasy sports sector in India has a potential to contribute GST revenue of around 3,000 to 3,500 crore and just over the next 5 years. Consider that this will enable central and state governments to substantially expand state revenue and use it for public services, because you're going to tax entry and you're definitely going to tax all winnings. Then employment generation. The Indian gaming industry will employ a huge number of people, and it has the potential for exponential growth. Jobs translate, for me as an economist, all jobs translate to positive externalities. Consumption will increase, expenditure will increase, GDP will increase, balance sheet will increase, you consume more, demand will increase, production will increase, and you put it in economic terms, you create what is called a virtuous cycle. This will curb money laundering, Prevention of Money Laundering Act and financing of terrorism. Now, how do you regulate? I say that you do so lightly and at the same time you do so effectively. So how will you create this safe harbor? I have a scheme for this. First, you have a self-regulatory organization. You regulate through an organization of industry leaders, and how do you find out who are the industry leaders? See who are the major players by market share. Then you create an oversight board over this SRO for effective governance. This should have legal experts, it should have administrators, and it should also have persons like Samir Bhai, persons of experience and eminence. Third, you devise standard rules and protocols. Just like traffic lights are uniform and rules are uniform, you need to have something which will draw the white chalk line around what you aim to do. Fourth, and most importantly, this will allow you to put in place an effective grievance redress mechanism. Thus, you need appropriate national or state level regulation. This is fairly critical when you consider the size of the burgeoning Indian market and the business opportunities which it presents. When I see all these ads of Dhoni and others and sports and dream team and so on and so forth, I wonder at the advertisement revenue which is being generated. The sport and the value of the sports and gaming industry, valued presently at 1.6 billion, expected to rise to USD 7 billion by 2025. And this then becomes the largest gaming market in the world, as my sons tell me. FDI investments are attracted between August 20 and January 21. Itself, the sector attracted 516 million. But enforcement for me also means regular inspection, regular audit to ensure cleanliness and sanitary hygienic conditions. These will lead to better monitoring and tracking of financial data, accounting records, and financial details. So better housekeeping, better hygiene. Now let me come to my last point, which is just a summing up, a strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats analysis. So the strengths, regulation will make it safe, prevent market manipulation.
Dipali, I'll interrupt here. Maybe we will bring the SWOT a little later in this discussion.
Okay, just give me one more minute and I will close. And I will tell you that we will be the next Las Vegas of India. That is the strength. The weakness is simply how will you enforce rules across a country of subcontinental proportion. The opportunity is the freedom to practice trade and profession. The threat is the morality argument and the overprotective state. And finally, let me close by invoking the Honorable Prime Minister, who in his Mann Ki Baat address on August 20th recognized the potential of this industry and has also said that the Nirbhay Aap challenge will recognize gaming as a category and there should be indigenous applications. So maybe we will have our own revival of the Ganjifa game. And at the very end, let me close with Charvak, because I began with an Indian tradition that nothing is evil, nothing is wild. And we are in the 75th year of independence. As you rightly said, let's shed the British inhibitions. And as Charvak said, Yavat jivet sukham jivet, rinam kritva dhritam pivet. So go ahead and enjoy life. Just as with joy, with happiness, there is nothing inherently evil in a controlled and regulated environment. It brings as much joy to life as the gentle game of teen patti with your family on Diwali. That's it. That's my only submission.
Thank you so much, Dipaliji, for so well articulating that.
Thank you.
So, just to clarify, Alok says states need this money. You say this money is important, but it should be regulated with the right touch. And you suggested an SRO. The only place I would differ is that it should not only be market share, there should be minority interest protected, because
Absolutely.
there would be players who are very small and then they'll never grow, because there will be these large sharks who would take over the SRO, as we see in several SROs. So with that caveat, I agree with everything else that you said.
No, however, I agree with you. And
however, at the state level, the answer is not as simple as that. Like we said, we have a federal structure. Within the state, we would have departments. You will have the state home department, which would have a view. They would have a state finance department, which would have a view. And there will be a state IT department, which would have a view. And in all fairness, all the three views have to be taken into cognizance before we say that what is it that a state wants. For that, we would need an entire series, because we cannot get everybody on the same plate. And with that, I invite Mr. Manoj Mishra from Odisha to share the technology perspective and how do they view Odisha views this whole gaming thing that's unfolding.
Thank you so much, Samirji. My good afternoon to now good morning, 15 minutes left, to all the panelists. I really am thrilled to hear what Dipali ma'am, Alok ji, and the industry persons spoke about. The whole reason why we are here is how government should function. We should listen to reasons. These are, as you aptly pointed out, that this is a new frontier. Now, we confuse, we think gaming is same as gambling. Sometimes the definitions we borrow from the British or the Americans. So a lot of confusion would be there. But those things will not go away just by saying that we would like to ban it or we would like to accept it. Because in this world, nothing is black or white. So whether we are talking about internet today, 5 years back, internet was seen as an evil. And then we saw Google, we thought you cannot live without Google. Suddenly now you are seeing Google is tracking you for every move of yours. So that's not good enough now. Facebook has gone through the same set of principles, where it was seen as a very mundane, harmless platform where you share your photographs, to where it has gone now, where they're paying millions of dollars in damages in most of the European countries and Australia and New Zealand. Now, platforms, industries will exist, whether in white, black, or in gray. They will exist in all three forms. Today we have our own currency. Today world has their own currency, and we also have cryptocurrency. Whether you like it or you don't like it, they will exist. From the industry side, I heard two basic arguments, but I don't agree with those arguments. So I'll just dwell a little on that, a minute probably, and then I'll give my view. One was that it is vehemently argued that we should have a uniformity for the sake of industry. We are not, nobody, either citizens or the state governments or the union government, is here to promise the industry to go to an extent. The industry will have to fight it out in the market and become what they want to become. We can't give it on a platter saying that we need uniformity everywhere. So just to bring the perspective, the constitution was written for a particular reason. Why there are three lists: a state list, a central list, and a concurrent list. And most of the things which pertain to individual choices are either in the concurrent list or are in the state list. It is because it is considered by our forefathers, and it still holds good, that when it comes to individual choices, the better form of governance would be locally done. So we have a three-layer governance, and these things can be regulated, can be monitored, can be nurtured only locally. So one rule will not fit all in India. You cannot compare Northeast with that of Kerala. You cannot compare Gujarat with that of Jammu Kashmir, or for that matter, Odisha. So this painting the country as one will not work. Second thing is that we keep telling that it is digital now, so you can't govern. So if you say that to the states, that states cannot govern because it is digital, anyway people will do it and they will find ways to circumvent, then why should India have any rules? The world will have one rule. So whatever America does, we should just keep quiet. It doesn't happen like that. Today we have large scale duping of people in the cyberspace. The cybersecurity is full of problems. Who is managing cybersecurity today? It is a concurrent subject. It is managed by the rules of the central government, but executed in the states. So similarly, whether it is digital, virtual, or real, all things can be managed as per the rule and as per the constitution. So those arguments do not hold good. But what holds good is that you cannot whisk away an industry on the pretext of social unacceptance. How do we know society doesn't accept gaming? I think Dipaliji put it very clearly that we all play games. Now, gaming world is not also uniform. Which kind of games is bordering on gambling? Which kind of games are pure games? There are games where money is not involved. So can you put them in another basket and have regulations like that? So you cannot whisk away industries. Industries will exist. So therefore, as coming from the government perspective, we look at industries not to ban them or to promote them. We look at industries as a fait accompli. They will exist. So what we need to do is, where is the interest of the state and where is the interest of the citizens? If these two things we define, we know how to regulate it. Today we know that gaming or gambling is going to stay. Gambling will be in the gray area. Gaming will come to the white area today or tomorrow. So rules will get framed, states will come on board, and they will define and make structures through which it can be executed on the ground level. Why we want to do that? It has been aptly by my fellow panelists have been told that one is the economic reason, is a reason that enough money can be made by the state for the use of the citizens. Yes, that is a factor, big factor. And second is that you also look at employment to generate employment. Now, if you imagine if we don't promote Hindi film industries, what happened to most of the film industries in the Europe? Hollywood came in and just steamrolled all of those industries, and they don't exist anymore. So if we don't regulate and promote this industry, what will happen is that all these gaming platforms and others, like the social media platforms, will be from abroad and you will be hooked onto it. You have no say in that. Today, you have very less play with Facebooks and Twitters and Google, primarily because you don't own it. Though we try to take credit of an Indian person of Indian origin going to the top of Twitter or Google, but that doesn't work. So therefore, we need to protect the industries to ensure that we have games of our own, which also has a demand base. So finally, I will just like to say that social acceptance that we are talking about, or for that matter, legal acceptance and government acceptance, all these three are a form of persistent demand by people. If the demand is persistent enough over a long period of time, no government can ban industries. People will come up with regulations and accept it. You have exceptions always prove the rule. For example, you have alcohol and drugs. There are states in India which ban alcohol, but predominantly is an accepted form and regulated market. We talk about US as one of the most open industry friendly countries in the world, and we keep saying that even marijuana is allowed is legalized in USA. It's not legalized in USA. It's legalized in about 13 states. States have their own reason, and they are answerable to people, because in every 5 years they go to the people to get votes. So when they take a decision, they will take it considering the majority and protect the minority. These two views will have to be taken by the state. And I don't see any state. I interact with most of the colleague officers from different states. We are going through a phase where we are recognizing this as an industry, because earlier gambling and gaming were under one act. Now, after the Supreme Court verdict, which has come that wherever there is an element of application of mind, it can be considered as gaming, not gambling. So therefore, certain words are being inserted into the legal framework in the states, and it is allowed. From my department side, I see it as a huge opportunity to create an employment base, which our Indians all across are very good at the software market, and even today doing products out of software. So gaming will be an industry to stay. Gaming will become a huge industry. But at the same time, we should not think that we are morally obliged to make rules and roll a red carpet for the gaming and gambling industry to come in without regulation. Regulations will come in, and my sincerest advice is that to the gaming industry is that don't look for a shortcut. Don't seek that the government should roll a red carpet. Fight it out. Create enough demand. Create those games which are acceptable by people. Governments will fall in line. Governments will not go against the will of the people. So therefore, it will be regulated. It will be accepted. But for the reason that it will create wealth for the state, it will create employment for the state. I think with this I rest. Over to you, Samirji.
Thank you, Manojji. That's extremely well put, including the union character of India, and what concurrent lists and central subject and state subject means. With that, I bring in Subi. Subi, you are one of the rare seasoned public policy professionals in this very young industry called gaming, and you have the capacity to take a top level view. So 2 questions. First, have you ever seen this level of a dialogue in the industry where all the stakeholders are there and issues are being discussed? And second, what is your perspective on how we should move forward?
Samir, first, I bow to you and I fold my hands, and which is the Indian culture when you pay respects. I think you've done a great service to the industry, and I have the burden of representing 2 stakeholder groups, which is industry and academia. I agree with you that nobody's really made the attempt to put together such a comprehensive set of views, diversity, plurality of expression in the room. I also want to start by thanking Dipali ji. I have never heard a more comprehensive, more structured, more well-researched perspective. A lot of what I wanted to say, you've already said. When you come in at this point in time with so many experts in the room, I'm truly grateful that a lot of context in terms of numbers has already been provided. So, Samir, to your question, this is unique. This is, I don't know how many of us truly appreciate what you're doing is historic. It is a milestone, because I do not speak for just my industry. To Manojji, I very humbly submit that, sir, we've never taken the easy way out. I will lay out the perspective of what as the industry and what as people who study and engage and research on the industry have to say about it. The context, with over 2 decades of leadership experience in public policy making, and many of it has been to represent at the global stage. So I was one of the first Indians on the United Nations MAG, working directly with the UN Secretary General to look at global internet governance principles. And as we know, after airspace and land and water, cyberspace is the frontier where we're all battling for supremacy. There are a few submissions that I'm going to make. And then we will also lay out the ask and we'll say why we feel the way we feel. And this is really important so that the industry has a perspective and a voice as to legitimately put forward its ask. Having said that, I'd like to underline and archetype my interventions by saying that for us, as this generation of policy professionals, we're Indians first. The interest of the country comes first, then the sector, and then the company. Having prefaced that, there are a following set of questions that we want to depose. What Dipaliji alluded to was a law. It's 1867 Public Gambling Act. And to this date, it's been about 156 years, nearly 156 years, 155 years, 10 months, 16 days to be precise, when it was enacted. That is the framework that we'd like to apply to an industry where, since this panel started, over 1 lakh people have come online. When we look at the numbers, that is the context that we're dealing with. To many, many questions, Dipaliji has already spoken. We've talked about the question of proportionality. We've talked about the question of the fundamental right that this amazing Constitution of India guarantees to us under Article 19(1)(g). I'm going to come into the legal aspect of it later. Samir, you started your intervention by saying that it's a state subject. When there are two fundamental problems that I have we truly understood the opportunity, and have we understood how this industry actually works? How many of us have downloaded the games that the industry is offered? How many of us have really made the effort to, and this burden of making sure that different stakeholders are on the same page is equally onto the industry. We have to engage every single day so that we're able to tell the government and our lawmakers and our policymakers what is the process that the industry follows when there's accountability, transparency, and responsibility. So my first fundamental point of difference is gambling and gaming are not synonymous. In the way the media represents this industry and the way we've been trying to legislate, we've been trying to use them interchangeably. When you look at gaming alone, there are 5 different categories of games. When you look at casual games, you look at social games, you look at video games. Lokesh Suzy is in the room, who represents the eSports community. There are medals which have been won by the Indian contingent. Sadly enough, when we were looking at the Asian Games, you had only 7 Chinese games. There are various aspects to the problem. And very interestingly, I want to go back with what Microsoft once looked at. And this is a joke that runs amongst the engineering community, that you had a bunch of engineers standing in front of a horse arguing how many teeth the horse has. And after a while, it took a policy professional to come in and say, hey, we can open the mouth of the horse and actually count the teeth and you'll have an answer. So when we approach a problem, it's from a very first principle lens. The economic opportunity is not just $3.8 billion US. You're looking at $39.7 billion US, given the right regulatory framework. If we look at balance of payments, there are currently 400 million gamers in India, going up to 700 million gamers. These are not just young children who are playing video games. 70% of AIGF respondents have said they want to play games professionally. When you look at job creation, you have independent 15,000 game developers. The aspiration, what we are trying to solve for from the lens of people who deeply care about this country, you're looking at an industry that is regulatory friendly, that welcomes the understanding of framework, but that is looking at regulatory sandboxes so that innovation and disruption can happen. We come from the internet, and the internet would not have existed had it been for ARPANET, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and Windsurf hoarding the internet for themselves. When we're looking at the opportunity or competitive opportunity advantage, you're looking at about 290 companies that are creating games which have the opportunity to go global. Games, as Dipaliji said, we're a nation that plays games. So why do we say that our ask is for a central framework? Is for the following reasons. The SRO that Dipaliji mentioned already exists. There is a Skill Games Council which has representation from all different game formats. It currently has retired Supreme Court justices who basically are also chairmen of the Bombay Stock Exchange, the likes of legal fraternity doyens, people from academia, people from industry. All game formats which are put out into the market go after a scrutiny of at least 7 legal opinions. When rules of the game, when responsible gaming charters are adhered to, and most importantly, when the skill versus chance debate is settled. The challenge that we are facing is when you apply an archaic Public Gambling Act, and by definition say gambling and gaming is the same thing, that is when you do the first disservice to a fledgling industry, which needs to be taken very, very seriously, because we've beaten media and entertainment as a sector. This is the only industry, Sameer, that has shown 22% growth year on year. When you look at those kinds of volumes, you have to be fair to an industry to give it a predictable and stable regulatory environment. We've never asked that roll out the red carpet for us. Our submissions have meant that engage with us and understand the nature of the internet, the nature of the industry. The test of a great regulation is proliferation and orderly growth and consumer protection. When we start engaging with the industry and you provide like a NIST framework, which the US follows for cybersecurity, you incentivize small businesses, you incentivize MSMEs for greater accounts of accountability, for greater accounts of transparency. Now, the question, why a central framework? Because when you look at banning apps, it's the order from MIT that goes in. One, national security, sovereignty; second, territorial integrity. As Manojji says, the execution can continue to happen at the state level. What we require is the MeitY and the government will not be determining which is a game of skill, which is a game of chance. It has to be a skill games council where the industry can make the submissions, where you have enough expertise present and a joint secretary level officer from the government present, where you make a determination, where you certify these games, and then there is an ombudsman like the banking system. And over that, you can have an oversight board. What we ask for from MIT is A, non-punitive actions, A, encouragement to the industry like IT parks, like telecom, to say that this is a sunrise sector. We make sure that unless if you follow these circumstances, if you follow this regulatory framework, the government will work with you together and not assume that you're either out to do chori or you're out to do bad or you're out to do terrible things to its citizens. That's how an industry develops. The industry also has to be held accountable because it's been a he said, she said so far. You do great disservice when you say only your game format is koshered and everything else is terrible. And that's where, the work that AIGF is doing, the work that the eSports Federation is doing comes in, where you say, this is where you come together, you adhere to certain norms and principles, you submit yourself to scrutiny, but the inherent assumption is this is a sunrise sector that cannot be confused with gambling. These are gameplay formats that have gone through scientific innovation. As we speak today, at least 8 company founders are toppers from IIT Kanpur's, IIT Mumbai's. There is a very serious intervention and a revolution which is taking place. Like Tel Aviv has become a center for startups. In Israel, you've seen London becoming a hub for a lot of cyber tech and fintech companies. Denmark has taken leadership position, and Copenhagen is emerging as the center for everything game design and development. So if I just look at the opportunity, Sameer, you're looking at India, because of culture, creativity, and engineering talent, becoming the next biggest hub for gaming, when not just, people playing games, you are designing for the world, you are making in India, you have engineering talent in hordes. But if you look at what they're doing, a lot of work is happening at the bottom of the pyramid. How do you value add to these processes? Now let's reconcile the ask. What the industry has been asking for is therefore unlocking domestic capital, therefore ensuring that you will have predictability in policy making, Therefore, asking MeitY like the IT industry, because the back end and the framework and the platform is IT. And if you were to take that down, that is the ministry that will be issuing orders. Why do we ask for this framework? Is because naturally there's a partnership model that has existed where there is an understanding of how all 7 layers of the internet work on mobile, on access. And this is important because you don't otherwise unlock the potential of Jandhan, Aadhaar, mobile that we've tried to create. So
That's
5 months.
quite a mouthful already. If you have one or two more points which is bulleted.
Yes.
Samir, so MeitY should drive it. So number 2, number 3. Then Samir, we can move on to the next speaker.
Yes, I understand. So looking at key takeaways, what we're largely looking at is for MeitY to drastically improve the ease of operations, to create competitiveness among states, like ease of doing business. There's a framework that was created. We are looking at a digital readiness index. We are looking at unlocking the flow of domestic capital into digital businesses. We're looking at support that MeitY through its startup innovation hub that MeitY is already created to provide Indian digital innovators to unshackle centers of higher education, to open up the India stack so that innovation can happen. And most importantly, what we're asking for is a light touch policy mechanism to go into the assumption that there is a self-regulatory body that already exists. What we have to do is make sure that, like sunlight, Samir, which is the best disinfectant, you bring this up and people can understand. The courts have already ruled. So from the Supreme Court to at least 7 high courts in the country, the distinction between skill versus chance has already been made on the basis of Article 19(1)(g), on the basis of Article 14. So we cannot undo good work that has happened.
Thank you very much,
Samir, just my last point. I want to go back to something that was said in 30 seconds and I'll rest my case. The lens that we're applying to gaming is both, unfortunately, paternalistic and patriarchal. We're making the assumption that the lowest common denominator does not know how to think for itself. Gaming cannot be an instrumentality and seasonality for policy making, which is done on a knee-jerk basis or when it is a season of elections. You cannot have gaming as a casualty in terms of assumption. And this is to say that we need to ride on both competitive and cooperative federalism, which is what the Honorable Prime Minister talks about. When we ask for a guiding principle from MeitY, the intent is not to somehow brush critical issues under the carpet. Yes, Ministry of IT, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Revenue, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Ministry of Sports. We have to bring all 5 ministries together, but create an enabling framework. And when we do that, 2 wrongs don't make a right. So I heard someone say, how will you legislate? The absence of figuring out how to apply and how the government will do its job cannot mean suffering for an industry, which could be your biggest bet. Because when you're looking at manufacturing, a lot needs to be fixed. This is something that the industry has put together, fought really hard and put in front, where India truly has the ability to unlock potential, take leadership position. So I believe it's not empathy. It is not a favor that we do to an industry. We owe it to this new generation of entrepreneurs. And we owe it. Why is it that 5 major gaming players are now looking to change their hubs to Singapore or to the US? We have to make sure that ease of doing business, one central repository of, hey, this is what you need to work with, is given to this industry, because we need to do this for our generation. We need to do this for job creation. And that's predictability of policy and the test of a good regulation.
Thank you so much, Subi. With that gives a very great opening for me to invite Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. You are working very hard on why this gaming industry should not go to Singapore and they should come to your state instead. So what is Telangana's view on such regulation, and how are you looking at gaming?
Thank you, Samir. Just give me 10 seconds to fix my camera. So Thank you very much, Samirji. Greetings to all the panelists. Greetings to all the participants. I would just focus on what we are doing in Telangana. I'm not getting into the moral debate or the economic and the employment kind of an issue. In my opinion, all these are well settled now. In Telangana, the position has been that in 2017, the state introduced a law. It modified the existing Gaming Act to put in online gaming as the Gambling Act rather, to introduce, to make a provision for including online gaming also into the Gambling Act, and any form of cash-based online gaming has been banned. So there has been a complete ban from 2017 onwards. This was done on the behest of the police, who found certain number of cases. Actually, I spoke personally to the DGP here, so I can share something straight from the horse's mouth. There were 3 kinds of incidents, a series of incidents, not episodic incidents, which promoted them to kind of recommend complete ban. One, they found that in certain kinds of rummy games, the operators, the game developers, the game operators actually were gaming the system. So I innocently participated in that, presuming that everything is fair, but it was not fair. There was some amount of rigging happening, and they found evidence of forensic evidence of that kind of thing going on. The second thing, of course, which other speakers have alluded to, like complaints from people who kind of lost their entire or a significant part of their earnings or their wealth, and complaints from their family members, etc., etc. The third set of complaints from minors, parents of the minors, that very young children, 12 years old, 14 years old. It's like underage drinking or underage driving, that kind of thing. So because 3 kinds of complaints had come to the police, they petitioned the government and the cabinet and got the whole act amended to ban everything. But we have evaluated the landscape in a more nuanced way over the last 4 years. And our conclusion is that taking an extreme step like banning is not correct, because in the last 4 years also, it is a fact that many people from Telangana, so in law, everything is banned. They do participate in gaming kind of activities, like, I don't want to name any of those games, but many games which involve money through surreptitious ways. There are, as you know, technology is evolved enough that which IP are you using can be concealed, and you can pretend to be somewhere else, and you can participate in that. So there's in that sense a loss of revenue, and the very fact that if laws are not being adhered to, if people are able to bypass them so easily, it also shows how kind of ineffective the state is, and so on and so forth. So, and then of course the economic opportunity, the job opportunities, we have kept all that in mind. So we have decided that banning is a very extreme form and is not justified or merited at all, but it definitely requires regulation. And the 3 kinds of things which the police have brought out, it can't be brushed under the carpet. These are not one-off simple kind of thing. I mean, there's data, there's evidence, there's a series of such incidents happening. So if we kind of counter the police and tell the government that no, let's go ahead, so many jobs will be created, so much of revenues will be earned, we also have to build a very strong case to show that the interests of the police or the law implementation will also be protected. So what we have done now, I mean, we are not yet there, but we are very close to it. That for the last year and a half, we have conducted extensive consultations, and some of the industry associations like AIGF, FIFS, and others. We have even studied the British model and certain other good practices where there is regulation, but at the same time, it doesn't kind of take that extreme step of banning it. So we have studied all those practices. We have also recognized that there are different forms of gaming. While some of you may know this, but just to share some data again, that particularly in the last 2 years, in the lockdown period, the game which has become the most played or the most used in India has nothing to do with direct betting. It is a game called Ludo King, and it's a very enjoyable game. I mean, I would recommend all of you to play it if you haven't played it so far. And of course, it has its own stream of revenue. It's not that it's charity or anything. They take lots of ad revenues to sustain. But there are those kind of games, and then there are games which involve money. There are fantasy sports. Then there is, of course, eSports, which now is a part of international competitive events, etc. So we have recognized that different categories of sports are there, and courts have settled this issue that games of skills are allowed, games of chance are, there's still a kind of a gray area around it. So we have also kind of figured out what kinds of things will qualify under games of chance. But most importantly, our regulation that we are very close to placing before our cabinet, it speaks about three very important things. So one is that we are setting up an online gaming committee, and it is that committee which will regulate the gaming companies. They will conduct strict scrutiny, they will do the audits, and a license will be given to company that will wish to run its games in the state. There will also be a self-regulatory organization which will be constituted within the online gaming committee that will ensure that the games that have been given the license adhere strictly to the terms of the license and do not pose any threat to people. And the regulatory organization will also report to the companies that are running without a license to the police department, and a dedicated team will ensure action is taken against them. And as was mentioned by Dr. Chaturvedi, the committee in Telangana also will consist of retired judges, government representatives, sports persons, academicians, and industry representatives to create a neutral environment. And auditing focus is very strong, just to ensure that there is no misuse, there is no prevention. And things like underage gaming or underage gambling, plus addiction, etc. There are provisions given for those also. So the draft act that we are introducing has been circulated widely. Many people have given their comments, and we feel very happy that in a very consensual way, in a forward-looking way, we have been able to kind of create that. At the same time, we know the economic imperative, the opportunities for creating jobs, etc. So we are ensuring that that does not pass us by. And gaming is one of the important priority sectors in our state. We call this bucket as image, multimedia, animation, gaming, AR, VR, etc. So in Telangana, the government has set up a center of excellence, which promotes development of game development skills. And I heard someone speak about Prime Minister announcing during the Atmanirbhar phase, when Chinese apps were banned, there was a national competition, and I'm happy to share that one of our startups who participated in the Center of Excellence, they won the Best Game Award nationally for sports. Their game is called Hit Cricket. And again, it's a very interesting and popular game. Some of you might have read this, that we have recently signed an MOU with MPL. MPL is now, I won't say that they're moving away from somewhere else, but they're creating a huge technology development center. We are also building capacities of our training institution. So one of the best game training institution anywhere in the country today is located in Hyderabad. It is called Backstage Pass, and we are kind of working very closely with them to study which are the latest technologies that are used in creating games, and how to ensure that enough number of people with those kind of skills are available here. So while we are taking care of the regulation, we also don't want to miss the bus in terms of enabling a rich ecosystem through which game developers, game organizers, players, all these will come together. The annual India Game Developers Conference, which is called IGDC, it's a very popular event. I mean, some of the best known game developers and enthusiasts congregate at one place. We have been hosting it for the last 4 years in Hyderabad, and we have a commitment that we'll be hosting it at least for many more years in the near future. So we want really to become a very important sector for gaming, and obviously our regulation has to be well in alignment with what our aspirations are. So we are working on both of fronts. That's from me, Sameerji.
Thank you so much, Jayesh. Clearly, Telangana has been at the forefront of a lot of such initiatives. You are a developed state. Even financially, you're not as challenged as the others. as I said at the outset, we have got two geographically challenged states here. J&K additionally has been historically challenged as well, and we have Assam. And how do these people compete for software investments, for jobs, and so on and so forth? So to my mind, one area was that these are all greenfield areas that are coming up in gaming. No one has got any advantage or disadvantage, which is already well established, so to say. So would you like to grab onto this opportunity and see how more and more jobs and investments come into your states vis-a-vis gaming? So I'll start with Mr. Akashdeep from Assam first, because that's a state that is very close to my heart. Akashdeep ji.
Thank you, Samirji, and my greetings to all the esteemed panelists. I had the privilege of hearing these deliberations for last 1.5 hours, and I see many things are being expected, and many things have already been done in other states. Assam definitely is situated at one part of the country, is now not that much of geographically challenged as it used to be. The mental challenge is more than the actual geographical one, what I feel. However, I think various things has been discussed and said about the gaming sector, and the issue of gambling has already been discussed in detail. I think these two issues of gambling and gaming has been juxtaposed in a manner that they are being inseparable. However, what we see here in Assam, as because we have not moved much into this sector, but we are still planning and we are learning from other states, there's a lot of scope, as Dr. Subi has also mentioned, gambling and gaming should not be taken as as same thing. They are totally different. There are 5-6 type of gaming structures, and they can be identified. So we are very open to that. Assam, he's making steps and leaping forward in the digital transformation and making software investments in this part of the country. We do have a lot of potential. We have not been able to unlock it, but we are trying now and we are coming up very well. We do have an IT policy, because all other things has been discussed. The issues, ethical dilemmas, moral, economic perspectives has already been discussed, which I was listening to. But I would like to mention here about our initiatives here in the state, and also the opportunities if they are. And we are also ready to, we are open to suggestions from the industry, and we are ready to render all possible help within the legal framework, because legality has already been discussed in detail. Not going into that part. We do have a policy here in Assam, which we call as Information Technology and Electronic Policy in Assam, of Assam 2017. And we are working in certain sectors, especially in software companies coming here, making their productions, doing investments, and we are kind of making all sort of things available to them. We also have a electronic manufacturing park here near the Guwahati airport, of state-of-the-art development center for the software park. Around 100-acre facility has already come up. It is well. I invite all the budding entrepreneurs or interested parties to come here and see it. Assam has a lot of potential in these big fields. In fact, gaming is one. We are also looking for big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine. Artificial intelligence again can be used for a gaming development part. Augmented and visual, augmented reality and virtual reality, and so on and so forth. We have set up certain infrastructure in place. We have got the international international internet gateway. We are talking with the Bangladesh authorities, and we are going to have our bandwidth increased. We have already set up the state-of-the-art data center and the tech park, which I have already mentioned. In the policy, if I mention specifically for the software, production and manufacturing of these things, if I go for the animation, visual effects, gaming, etc., we have a separate component, and we are looking for investment in these sectors, specifically with all positivity here in this part of the country. We we are in touch with several industries who have shown interest, not especially in the gaming sector, but obviously in this, but others who are there are most welcome. Uh, if you want, I can mention few of the things of those policies, which is very specific, because the kind of general discussion over the whether gaming should be allowed or not. But I would like to be specific about my policy here.
Sure.
And that is that if somebody has commenced its commercial production since 1st of January 2018, and they are for operational for at least 6 months, we are going to promote them, give them some sort of subsidy also, or promotion, training, or whatever possible in our software park, and we are going to handhold them. And we are going to bear at least, not at least, at max 50% of the cost of production in developing such a game, animation, or any other thing. So this is what we have put in place. We have just framed this policy, and we are trying to popularize it. So I find it a very good forum here today to make it and to really appeal to all the IT professionals, the experts here, and the entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs. So they are most welcome in this part of the country. They can come here anytime. They can discuss. We are all available. As you know, that this part of the country is almost untapped in this sector, not only in gaming in this sector, but for example in IT related initiatives. But we have a lot of potential. We know our boys and our girls are going from this part of the country to the Bangalore. They have sizable population there in Bangalore, Bombay, and other places. They are naturally inclined to such things. They are very technically and this thing well oriented, and I see many people having these things here. But yes, definitely we'll be really looking forward to somebody is interested in coming here. We are there for their help.
Thank you so much. With that, I move on to Mr. Amit Sharma. Amitji, you're looking after two states, almost Jammu as well as Kashmir. And tourism has been a mainstay historically of these states. And gaming and tourism are a very big opportunity elsewhere in the world. So in the current scheme of things, where is gaming in J&K?
First of all, thanks, Samir, for inviting all of us and sharing perspectives from all angles, from all geographical locations. And I believe it's a great initiative. Gaming will become a major area to ponder upon in times to come. The way you have taken forward this discussion, bringing experts from all areas, be it industry, academia, and it was very interesting discussion, very innovative things which were taken up today, talked about, and it has opened up vistas even for all of us, those areas which were still virgin, untouched for all of us. Yes, JK is much known for tourism, and we all know that people come and play and have fun here. So adding a gaming perspective is definitely something which we all look forward to. And I believe that gaming has a great future, the way we are finding out things, whatever, because if you go by my personal opinion, I have found it to be an addictive kind of thing. Like we have seen people hooking up to TV screens in last 2-3 decades. The things have changed thick and fast because of the implosion of a lot of internet and a lot of such activities. We were talking about cryptos and all, they are new in things. And yes, I fully agree to most of the things which have been deliberated today. Like when we talk about this thing, like gaming and gambling, definitely they are two different things. We can't compare the two platforms. But yes, sometimes people make out this thing that yes, gaming is a kind of thing in which we are hooking up a big kind of ad campaigns and all, so much money is being involved. And your perspective, especially being the moderator, had a lot of meaning in it. And then we have heard the opposite perspectives also, people have talked about. And like you rightly said, like our tourism policies, their IT policy, we can definitely work upon this perspective. Like tourism, it adds. Why I say addictive? Because I have found most of the times in traveling and all, whether in the flights or at the airports or everywhere, we find people hooked up with games. Even I find all generations, beyond all sexes, beyond everything. Like, it has simply become an addictive behavior. And let me tell you, like, when things become a kind of addiction, it's better to actually regulate them, as some of the seniors from even our bureaucratic side have already talked about. Regulation has to be very, very strong, rather than, or it should not be strong in the sense like it is stopping people. I'll just share a very contemporary recent example. If you talk about the thing which has happened in Bihar recently, we saw so many deaths happening because of the liquor. That's prohibition is implementation, and whatever poisonous thing was there in that. See how bad effect it can have when you have purely regulation, strict regulation, and no solution, alternate solutions. So I believe in JK, as you rightly said, like Northeast, the world is open. We are very much open to welcome those incubators or software industry people who are there, and definitely incentivization is definitely on the rolls, because the new industrial policy is really lucrative. Recently we entered into an MOU with government of Dubai, if you must have read or seen it, and they are coming up with 2 software parks, one in Jammu and one in Srinagar. So we have very good openings coming up, in which we have 2 international these airports coming up. Jammu will be very soon up to that level. Srinagar is already an international airport. We will have these facilities. We will facilitate all those people who are interested to work in this area and field. And you see, question of major regulation comes when it spreads up to that level. We can say that in JNK it is only at the consumption level. At the production level, at the manufacturing level, or when it becomes a hub, like when actually things reach that level, definitely we will also contribute a bit. At this point of time, I believe that if we come up with some good central regulation or a kind of policy pertaining to gaming, courtesy such kinds of talks and debates which are going on all across, that will make a difference. I believe MIT must be actively looking into it, and the ministry will surely come up with something probably like a win-win situation, because that is how the situation can be tackled. In India, there's a huge potential, huge market. As I already mentioned, that I believe these things are irreversible. In an era or an age where internet influx is up to this level, I think there is no stopping to such kind of things which are happening. So I believe that not we are far away from reaching a point where it would be little bit in a regulated mode, and all states or UTs will definitely become a part and parcel of it naturally. And if required at the state or the UT levels, we would also contribute our bits. But in general, I say, yes, we need to strike a balance between the present scenario. It should not run out of hands. You were talking about mostly that the money is flowing out of India. There are US investors, flight of things. We heard everybody sharing different perspectives, and more or less like our other states, especially like Northeast states, my colleagues from Northeast. So similar is the situation in JK. We are ready at a point where we would welcome them with a red carpet. All the investors who want to come, they can talk with us. We will share the policy level initiatives we have taken. We will welcome them, and we would like them to start afresh and do something good, because place and space is immaterial in the IT industry. If they come over here, we have so many things to offer, like the policy in itself. If they go through our initiatives we have taken in the past and the way we are moving now, we would
Thank you so much. I think that's quite a refreshing perspective from JNK. With that, I would like to bring in Amol. Amol, sorry, I'm bringing you at this juncture because there are specific questions I had in mind for you, which only you can address. So far this entire discussion has happened as if India is a country in isolation. So when your subject, of course, is competitiveness. So, whether we do it or don't, what does it do to India if it continues like this? That's one question. And the second question, of course, is that being a public policy professional, what do you think about the direction public policy discourse is taking? Is the route to public policy now only through courts, or is it going to be through discussions?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Kocher, for inviting me, and it is a pleasure to be part of this August gathering. I think I'll just like to take your second question first. No, litigation is not the first option. It should not be the first option. Discussions, deliberations, and consensus is the way forward, as it has been for so many years in the past, and should be the way forward. I think. The courts also have from time to time indicated that this should be the way forward. And while I speak on some of the issues that have been touched upon, I will just want to talk about that as well. However, just sort of going back to some of the points which I noticed in the discussion and some of the things that you had also highlighted. Quickly, few things which have come to my mind is definitely. There is a question of whether this is in the union list or it is in the state list. That is sort of there is a demand for union law. There is a perspective of different states. Different states have different priorities, and therefore they would like to regulate it in their manner. You had said that there could be a possibility of a common minimum program. Perhaps we can do it the other way around. There could be a possibility of creating a red list or a no-go list, wherein the center and states can say that, okay, this is something that we won't do. And I say this because we see a lot of knee-jerk reactions or complete prohibitions or actions which are criminal in sort of attributing criminal liability to officers of the private sector, which are sort of really problematic because criminal liability could attract a lot of negative attention in terms of reduction in investment, innovation, and other such possible unintended adverse consequences. It is also against sort of the EODB policy of the Government of India. As you know, sir, that under the Companies Act or Limited Liability Partnership Act, the Government of India is decriminalizing provisions. It's saying that, okay, in case there is a violation, we can go with imposition of penalties or delicensing or whatever, but we will not impose criminal liabilities on officers of private sector. However, under IT laws, and particularly in some of the legislations or actions which I have been noticing have happened in this sector, and we have also sort of mentioned in by some of the panelists that police actions have been taken, and there are sort of criminal actions which have taken. So some of these things could be perhaps avoided for a more coherent approach. So for ensuring a coherent approach, there could be some sort of white paper or a policy statement which can lay out 6, 7, 8 objectives in terms of what is the problem that we are trying to address through the regulation and how do we intend to address the problem. So I saw or I heard that for instance, in JNK, the government thinks that addiction is a problem. In some states, there's a problem of state revenues. In some states, there could be a problem of of minors being unfairly treated. So different states might have different priorities. And I suspect that clearly articulating the problem and then going about designing a regulation to address that specific problem could be perhaps a way forward in this industry. Secondly, what I fear is that in case different states come up with their own policies, which is sort of good, but without taking into account perspectives of different stakeholders and without looking at what other states and the other regulators are doing, there is a possibility of a regulatory overlap. For instance, there were concerns about sort of data breaches and other such issues. Now, under the data protection bill, which is currently being debated in the parliament, there is a specific provision of protecting minors' data and minors' privacy. So if that is your objective, then should the central law which is being debated not take into account should not be taken into account. In case your objective is to prevent money laundering, there are specific provisions under the PMLA, and the RBI is the regulator, and Dr. Joshi is there. So is there not a possibility of there is inconsistency between state regulations and what Reserve Bank is trying to do? So there is a need for more coherent approach to the regulation, wherein all the state agencies, both at central and the state level, can talk to each other, and also with other stakeholders, including the industry, including policy contributors and people like you and us, to have a more informed opinion about this. I'll just sort of like to take a minute to make two more points here. Dr. Joshi also talked about paternalistic attitude, which is sort of perhaps taken from or a legacy of the colonial entity. So Madras High Court, when it looked into this issue of gambling versus gaming, and it is a game of skill versus other things. So it said that excessive paternalism could result into authoritarianism. So we need to prevent authoritarianism and ensure that there is an optimal regulation. Now I come back to the original point of how do we ensure that there is an optimal regulation. The Supreme Court in dental college judgment, and which was sort of subsequently applied in Aadhaar case, and also in the crypto case, which you had talked about initially. It laid out 4 tests of testing a regulation on the sort of test of optimal regulation. First is whether your aim is legitimate or not. So we know that the aim is legitimate. There are serious concerns about gaming agency. The concerns could be differing, but there are serious and sincere concerns. The second is suitability of the instrument itself. Whether law, either a state law or a central law, would be a suitable instrument, and there could be several other instruments that we could sort of figure out. For instance, earlier today, the Ministry of Education in the central government issued an advisory around the issue of harassment, mental health, and gaming, and depression, and sort of do's and don'ts for parents and children. So are these kinds of advisory not sort of a better way rather than a prohibition or a stringent regulation? So that is the second step. The third step is necessity. Is there a more restrictive alternate available to achieve the same objective which you are trying to achieve? So there is a need for cost benefit analysis and looking at different alternatives and speaking to industry and stakeholders. And the fourth and the last test is proportionality, whether there could be significant adverse consequences on stakeholders or people whom we are trying to regulate. So I think this 4-step test with a consensus-based approach, wherein different stakeholders can speak to each other, could be a good way forward for all the states as well as the central government in this regard. I think that is what I had to say, but would be more than happy to take further questions. The last submission which I have, just one last submission is about, given that this is a sunrise industry and regulations are happening at a breakneck speed, perhaps there is a need to also have sunset clauses in the regulations. So sunset clauses essentially means that you review what is the impact of your regulations every 3 years, every five years, because the industry and the ecosystem is changing very dynamically, and then you see whether this regulation is achieving its objective or whether do I need to tweak it or not. So I think some of these better regulation making processes could do a lot of good in terms of achieving state objectives and also creating a safe ecosystem for the industry to grow and contribute to the economy. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. With that, I actually just take a diversion and come to Lokesh. Lokesh, if you're there and you can put on your camera.
Yeah, I'm there.
You represent the eSports industry. You are the good guys here. Your logic is that, we are the good guys, throw everybody else under the bus because these are the bad guys.
No, not at all.
And also, the fact that there is hardly any esport player in India. I mean, you are all, so is there an opportunity? What are you trying to do? What are you saying?
See, basically, I'll just kind of, stand corrected. So we are not saying who's the good guy or the bad guy, right? Because we are nobody to even point that out, right? There is enough mechanism which exists in India to do that. And moving to the second point is that which we personally believe is the way somewhere, we are defining gaming. Right. So I think the definition or way, everybody talks about gaming. See, we were all talking about, laws, वो जेल में चला जाएंगे, ये पुलिस हो जाएगी, ये regulation हो जाएगा, addiction हो जाएगी, ऐसा हो जाएगा, वैसा हो जाएगा. All that fear is being created. It exists or not exists, I don't know, but there's a lot of fear, which is talked about when we talk about gaming. And ban ho gaya, is state ne ban kar diya, wo kar diya. See, what we are missing out is that there is, while we talk about, let's say, games which are in discussion, whether this game is skill based, chance based, or whatever way we want to put it across, there are, I don't know, are we or the people who are deciding on that, have you heard of games like Fortnite? And I was very happy, Manojji also was very clear in the terms of, a clarity wherein he also stated that we have within gaming, there are different categories of games. I think that is very, very important. And somewhere, I think in the main clause, or sorry, main law, which we are talking about, the Public Gambling or Gaming Act or whatever, now, because, we are talking about evolved civilization, and we are talking about internet and everything. Hence, the word gaming should be completely removed from that particular law. Now, imagine somebody playing a video game called FIFA, which is a simulation game for traditional sports. And he is asking us a question, and he's a 16-year-old guy, right? A child, actually, not even a guy. He's a 16-year-old child who's asking us, yes, sir, can we play FIFA in Telangana? Sir, can we play FIFA in Karnataka? Because there is a regulation which says that online gaming is banned, or whatever is that regulation, right? So, as somebody, you, me, and, people across the board, we may actually pick up that, or, do a Google search, get a draft or whatever is the regulation, download it, read it properly, and then we come to know, okay, there is, it says that any kind of wagering, I'm specifically referring to the latest Karnataka ban, that it says, that any kind of wagering or money involved is not, is those kind of applications or things are banned. So it clearly, it's very demotivating, and it clearly, somewhere we think that, everything online gaming, esports gets clubbed into, and people come up with that kind of a perceptions and things like that. So that is our first, and I think the moment you do that, a lot of these discussions, you will be able to pinpoint the problem or the area which needs to be addressed. Now, as far as we are concerned, so specifically, one is that we all are a subset of video game industry. We somewhere, the law doesn't even talk about video game. It talks about gaming. Like myself, rest of the janta, other than, let's say the 50, 20 or 100 set of people who are involved, the rest of the janta is actually confused. The moment you say gaming, now imagine if there is a video game cafe in Karnataka, right? And if some guy just goes to a police station and says, yahan pe na gaming ho rahi hai, online gaming ho rahi hai. Now what will this police wala do is, oh wow, another opportunity to make money and harass people. That is, that's a perception, right? So this guy will go there to that video game gaming cafe. Acha kya kar rahe ho? Acha game khel rahe ho? Kaun si game? Acha internet se connected hoti hai? Online game ho gayi. Chalo bhaiya thane mein. That is the problem which our gaming cafes have also faced that kind of problem. And I'm sure that jab se wo officially ban ho gaya, I'm sure that these are also vulnerable. And then who explains to that police wala that, okay, no, this is not that online gaming, this is that kind of a thing, there is no wagering happening. See, when you play online video games, and see, video game can be played offline, online, either ways. And if somebody said that, okay, so you can download a video game from a Google Play Store and hence it becomes an online gaming. So I said okay, that may not be the true way of calling it as online gaming. Like for example, if you or me or somebody's playing a game like Candy Crush, you definitely download it from a Google Play Store. That's an online internet connection, and then you're playing it, and you play it on an offline mode. Or let's say even if it is connected, your phone is always connected. So should we call it as a online gaming? Should it be put into that online gaming thing? So that is very big
So from
concern.
your perspective, definition is a very big challenge.
Absolutely, because the moment we do that, you'll see that a lot of these things will not fall under, because thanks that I heard Jayesh also, he was talking about that they are setting up a committee wherein certain set of organization would be part of it, but I did not hear anything regarding esports. But obviously he agreed that obviously esports is now in Asian Games and everything, but would esports, now when we talk about esports, now that is sports again is a state subject. Now, does this mean, again, coming back to Karnataka, is that if, let's say, everybody starts thinking that, okay, esports is also online gaming, or let's say, playing poker, fantasy is also esports, or playing any kind of video game is also esports, so that's a wrong understanding. So that typically means that is Karnataka by banning online gaming, and if that is the assumption, are they saying that Karnataka will not send a state representation in, let's say, when ESFI does a national esports championship, or let's say there is a state player who qualifies to participate in Asian Games or Olympic Games? So is Karnataka saying that we're not going to be part of it? So somewhere in specifically esports, when we talk about, obviously there's a IT component involved and there's a sports component involved. But because it's a sport which is recognized by the highest sports body, which is IOC, and then subsequently Olympic Council of Asia, it's just that we need to get this thing recognized within different states also, and that is my humble request to my fellow panelists from the respective states is that we can connect, whatever, we need your support to get it recognized as a sport, because while we are talking about banning and there is so much of a fear and negativity when the moment we say online gaming, there are positive sides also. That if you are playing, and just to kind of a small correction here, that not playing all kind of video games is not esports. There are only 5, and if Samir, do I have a permission to share just one slide?
Yeah, okay, just do it very quickly because we have.
Yeah. Just it'll just take a minute for me to kind of because it says that seeing increases the retention. So just
So while you're at it, let me bring in Neha. You can show your slide.
Yeah, it's there. So basically, what we're saying is that see, if you're involved into fantasy, teen patti, rummy, poker, if you are or into online gaming or gambling the way our Indian laws have defined it, or if you're doing casual video gaming, or if you're doing any kind of real money gaming, this is not esports. So now question is that, if this is not esports, then what is esports? So these are only largely the 5 genres of video game which fall into the category of esports. First is sports. Like if you, there are a lot of, like Hit Wicket is a good example for esports. Jayesh did mention about Hit Wicket, very good set of, people who have made this product. So similarly FIFA, right? So real-time strategy, Hearthstone, Clash Royale. So Hearthstone was the title wherein India won the bronze in 2018 Asian Games. Then we have MOBA, which is multiplayer online battle arena. And then we have fighting category, and then we have first-person shooter. So these are 5 genres of video games which fall under the category of esports. So this means that if you're playing, like Ludo is a good multiplayer game, but Ludo unfortunately does not fall under the category of esports because the skill required or the outcome is dependent upon the dice. You don't know whether you'll get 1, 2, or 6 or whatever.
Okay, thanks, Lokesh. We got your point. With that, I bring in Neha. Neha, what's the perspective? From a lawyer, the lawyer have to have the last word, right? Yes.
Just a second. Actually, I have another meeting lined up at 1 o'clock. So I hope I just want to take an excuse and leave if you permit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us.
So it's a pleasure being at this platform, and I believe more such discussions will be taking place in times to come for enlightening overall society and bringing about major changes which are direly required. Thank you.
We would certainly do that. Neha. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much, Samir. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for putting together this discussion and for having me. It's lovely to be here. Good afternoon, everybody, fellow panelists, and everyone who's listening in as well. Look, I think a lot of what a lot of what we think about when we think about the legal perspectives has come through different elements, have come through different what different speakers have said. So what I'll do is I'll try and contextualize this to some of the thinking that we've been doing internally as well, in terms of what we'd like to see is the way forward really for regulation of this online gaming ecosystem in the country. Right now, as the way things stand, like a couple of people before me have also said, the fundamental challenge that we see all of our clients struggle with, agnostic of the sector of online gaming that they fall in, whether you're a fantasy sports platform, whether you're a casual game platform, whether you run a card game, it doesn't matter what kind of platform you are. The single common linking factor for all of them has been that we would like to see a lot more regulatory certainty. We'd like to see a lot more regulatory predictability, and we're okay with whatever that regulatory certainty and predictability, whatever form that takes. A few years ago, we were working with the Internet and Mobile Association of India and putting together a report on the state of the online gaming industry and ecosystem. And in every single one of the conversations that we had with pretty much every Indian gaming company that existed at the time, this was a single most sort of common refrain. So then the question becomes, because what you have right now is basically a patchwork of legislations. You have your Supreme Court, which has sort of given you the overarching guiding principle when it comes to online gaming, real money online gaming, where that's how we've evolved this test of preponderance of skill over chance. So if your game, which then now in practice has become, if you meet this 51% threshold of, if your game has more than 51% or more skill, then you become a skill-based game. And that's the test that we're seeing just sort of widely applied across the industry. But what you have is, despite the Supreme Court sort of guidance way back in the 1950s, you do have a patchwork of different kinds of laws that different states across the country have come up with. And broadly, these fall under three categories. You have your liberal states, you have your licensed states, which are looking to have some kind of a licensing mechanism for gaming companies to operate in the states, or you have the third kind of states where whether it's a skill-based, where there is a sort of complete ban, right? Whether it's a game of skill or whether it's a game of chance, regardless of that, if you're a platform that's offering games for money, that's not okay. So the free-to-play model is really not what's under contention. Nobody has a problem with that. But the minute there's money involved for a variety of, socio-economic, political considerations, that's where it starts to get tricky. So now for the industry, navigating this sort of patchwork of laws becomes difficult and it becomes challenging because you're dealing with uncertainty on two fronts. You're dealing with uncertainty on the front of different states have different, so I have to tweak my business model and I have to tweak my product and offering what is kosher in one state is not necessarily kosher in another state. So that's a constant sort of uncertainty that I'm dealing with. That's one. And second, it's not necessary that states themselves are not evolving their own sort of thinking and regulatory model, right? So you're dealing with that kind of localized uncertainty as well. So therefore now, where do you go from here and what is the way forward? One of the things that we've advocated for a long time is that there is need for the parliament to step in. There is need for the central government to step in, because if you look at it constitutionally, that's really the only way that you can bring about regulatory certainty and predictability to the sector. For as long as you have different states that are regulating this under the entries of betting and gambling, legally that's the law. So sure, we can talk about self-regulatory organizations, we can talk about consultations, we can talk about a whole bunch of different things. But the only way to solve for this at the national level is if you have a parliamentary statute. Now, obviously, there are questions that are unanswered in terms of who is the right ministry to do this, whether it's the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, whether it's the IT ministry, given that this is a sunrise sector, different elements, what Amol was talking about earlier as well. At the end of the day, this is an industry that you're talking about. So different elements will continue to be regulated by different line ministries. So that is an open question, and one that sort of remains unanswered and needs a little bit more conversation and dialogue, right? So second, also then, where under the constitution scheme of things do you look at it? Do you look at this as something? This is something, if I remember correctly, Dr. Tharoor's bill had proposed. Do you locate the authority for the central government to do this under the entry that speaks to communications and broadcasting under the central list? Do you look at residuary powers that the central government has? So open questions. No clear answers, unfortunately, not yet, but definitely something that we've advocated. Legally speaking, if you want certainty and clarity, it has to come from the central government, it has to come from parliament. The second sort of open question, again, that we'd like, this is something that we've spoken about before here as well, is this whole business of skill versus chance. What we don't have today is an objective mathematical basis necessarily, a standard that is agreed upon, on the basis of which you can actually clearly evaluate whether something is a game of skill or a game of chance. So what you have is a principle that the Supreme Court has laid down, and that's fair. I mean, you can only have a kind of principle coming in from the highest court of the land. And then a subjective application of this test across different states and even across different high courts in different states. So as a result, what has happened is the same game, right? Whether you look, say, for example, you look at rummy or you look at poker, legal in some states, illegal in some states, because different high courts have chosen to, and it's the same test that you're applying. It's not like you're applying that test. It's not like you're applying different tests. It's the same test that you're applying of preponderance of skill. But because there is no objective, mathematical, empirical way in which you can assess really what this means in practice, you're compounding the problem of uncertainty as well. So this is, I think, the biggest ask that also we'd have from any kind of a forward sort of future looking law to bring about certainty on these two fronts. One, of course, you have to have an innovation enabling framework that keeps in mind all of these various different interests that we've spoken about today. Have some kind of an objective empirical way to decide really when is something a game of skill and when is something a game of chance. Again, so that you have the same test that you currently have being applied consistently and predictably across the board. And the final sort of point, and I'll stop with this, is really then you get into questions of enforcement and implementation, right? And what should then your regulatory architecture and design look like? And I think there have been some fantastic ideas that have come through on today's panel. Self-regulatory organizations 100% have a role to play. I think that's only fair in any emerging sector, in any sunrise sector, because we simply just don't fully understand the potential. We don't fully understand how all of this is going to evolve, and the only way sort of forward is for everybody to come together, for everybody to have more and more of these conversations and dialogues, and which also then needs to translate at the regulatory level. So having this sort of multi-tiered architecture, which is actually representative, again, from a implementation point of view, this is not something, even if you have a central statute, the implementation at the end of the day, as several other speakers have said before me as well, is going to happen at the local level. It's going to happen at the state level. So anything that we design sort of needs to bring together these elements as well. So yeah, I'll stop with that in terms of what I think is the way forward for the law.
Thank you so much, Neha. As you may have noticed, we all overshot the time. However, I think what is very important is that we've got such a lot of plurality of view to the table. And so we know, we have kind of sort of a laundry list of issues that need to be discussed and deliberated. And I think that the great outcome from this discussion would be that we would put together a discussion paper which lists out all these areas and then, helps us all build on it through, a larger consensus building rather than through the route of the courts. I thank you all for joining us and being with us today. Thank you very much, Dipali ji. You've done some excellent scholarly work on the subject, and I'm looking forward to publish. Thank you, Akashdeep ji. Thank you, Jayesh Ranjanji. Thank you to everybody who's been on the panel. I think we can together surmount these little bumps in the road, and we can make sure that India becomes one of the most significant players globally in the gaming industry. And it helps us generate jobs, it helps improve the economy, and it helps equitable growth reach all parts of the country, specifically in areas which are remote like Northeast and J&K. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samirji. Thank you. It was a pleasure being on this panel, please. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.